Greetings, humans! A lot of people seemed to really enjoy the first time that I went through a bunch of random offerings at the store and talked about how you could use them for cosplay. So, today I am visiting the Dollar Tree in hopes of finding and pointing out to you guys all kinds of different things that are useful for cosplay that you can get at the dollar store. Alright, we're starting off in the party and decoration aisle. I can see right off the bat a few things that could be useful here. We have some little organza bags that either could be used as they are for like maybe some kind of little potion bags, or you could also just cut this fabric apart and use it to make something else. It's only a small amount, but could be useful. These are definitely useful. We've got some ribbons with tulle here. These are meant for attaching to pews, but they could also be used just as well for ribbon on a costume. And there's a fair bit in these little packets. Here we also just have some rolls of tulle, which can be very useful as well for making wings or veils or anything that needs to be gauzy and thin. Some nice little cardboard boxes here that some of them are nice enough that they probably could be used as is for some type of treasure chest box type thing, but these could also very easily be repainted, wrapped in leather or fabric to look like some kind of little treasure box or magical item. I mean, heck, you could repaint that to look like a tesseract if you wanted to. Similarly, these little tube boxes over here could be very useful. I could see using these as part of the barrel of a big gun, or as part of maybe like a jetpack or something. You could use that as like a little fuel container. Random cups. Again, these can be used kind of like those cylindrical boxes over there as pieces of something else. You could, you know, put a couple of these together to create a larger cylindrical kind of shape and paint those to get some really interesting mechanical components for something. These guys are, well, kind of cheap and tacky looking, but there's actually some really nice wire in here holding this thing stiff. That's bendable, posable wire that could be used to make something else. And the weights in the bottom could actually be potentially useful as well, because these are actually just a type of concrete weight that could be repainted, repurposed, glued to things. Clear plastic plates can be very valuable because they have that translucency. If you need something that looks like, say, stained glass, you can actually color these with a marker and keep the transparency that you have on the clear plastic and cut them into whatever shape you need for anything that looks like colored glass or colored plastic. Paper doilies like these make great single-use stencils. You can spray paint or acrylic paint or whatever you want over these. They have some nice little patterns on them. These are all sort of the same design, but they can create some really interesting shapes. We have some perfectly nice looking plastic goblets. They look enough like glass that they could be used as is. They could also be repainted, spray painted, colored with markers to get a stained glass kind of look. Here's a lot more clear plastic dishware, specifically designed to look like cut crystal. These are going to be a little harder to cut than the softer clear plastic, but again, they can be painted, glued, colored with markers to keep the transparency. Pieces can be put together to create new shapes, and all of these then can be incorporated into other items. Most of this is cards and stationery in this aisle, which is not going to be terribly useful, but we're going to get down to here into some of these classroom supplies, which might have some use. This looks like it's supposed to be a massive pair of tweezers, but that looks kind of futuristic to me. That's something that could very easily be spray painted and incorporated into some kind of spacesuit or alien kind of design. It also has a potentially elvish kind of look. If you painted it into part of maybe some elvish armor, that could look really cool. Pencils. Unexpectedly useful items, because this gives you a long, narrow cylinder, which can be very useful for incorporating into building weapon props or into anything that needs something that looks like a small, narrow tube. Just paint it up any way you want, and it can look like something totally different. These flexible plastic binders are actually really incredible for cosplay, because what this does is it gives you a sheet of flexible, formable material that won't tear or wrinkle. So you can use this if you need, for example, something that looks sort of armored but isn't too stiff. I've used this before to line obies for kimono to give them that stiff look without having to shove paper or any type of boning down them. The metal rings and rod inside the binder there can be useful as well. You pull that out and incorporate it into weaponry or armor, or you could even use that as some sort of like mobile hanger to dangle things from the rings, or you could separate the rings entirely and just use the metal strip or just use the rings. Here's another example of an object that can be easily incorporated in with other objects to create really interesting shapes for jetpacks or weapons or armor. Because this is made of wire mesh, it can be cut and bent with pliers, so you could actually cut the bottom off of this and flatten it out to end up with a strip of this metal mesh. Erasers like this, you can actually cut and shape with a scalpel to either create a stamp or to create a sort of a low relief carving for something that you need to attach to your costume. And rulers are extremely useful for making small weapons. You can use a ruler like this, carve it and shape it down, since this one is made out of wood, to create a shape you need for like a dagger or something. I've also used plastic rulers like this. You can sand these down and shape them as well if you need a weapon that looks like it's made of glass. I used a ruler similar to this to create a glass knife when I cosplayed Vin from the Mistborn series. Here's a magnetic clip. Now, the clip itself might not be useful, but this has a very large, powerful magnet in it, and magnets are super helpful if you need to attach something temporarily to your costume. Like, for example, if you have a piece of armor or mask or tail or something that you need to be able to take off at different points, a heavy-duty magnet like that can be great. Rubber bands, of course, are useful for a million things: to connect pieces together, to cut them apart and just have some small strips of rubber, repaint them, reuse them. Those are awesome. And here we have a great selection of poster board and foam core board, both of which are useful for constructing general shapes that you need. Poster board, of course, is going to be a little flimsier, so you're not going to want to construct anything sturdy out of that. But the foam core board, you can cut and shape and actually create sturdy shapes like armor and helmets and weaponry out of that. And obviously you're going to want to, glue it together very thoroughly and cover it with something else to make it look more interesting, and spray paint and all of that. But this can actually give you a really great base. It's going to be a lot cheaper than something like EVA foam. Not as sturdy, not as workable, but definitely if you're on a budget, that's a great option. Along the back here we have a variety of styrofoam items, which can actually be very useful. Styrofoam, of course, you can cut, crumble, melt, do all kinds of weird things with, so there's all kinds of options with that. Alright, this is going to be a useful aisle. We have a large number of plastic containers and baskets over here. Obviously those are going to be sturdier objects, so you can use those as a starting point for anything that needs a little bit more sturdiness. You can cut those, bend them with a heat gun, use them as is for something. Some of them have like these little rubber parts in them that you might be able to pry out and reuse for something. A lot of them have these little holes and shapes in them that you could also use as stencils for painting onto another object. We're going to have all kinds of cool options here in the toys. A lot of these, it's going to be all about the shape. Here we have a sieve shape. You could cut this plastic, you could use these pieces for something else. We have a little bit of foam here that could be used, shaped into something. Goggles are a great thing to use. Those can be, you can pull the lenses out to use for something else if you want to. You can also just repaint these, cover them in fabric or leather, end up with some kind of steampunk goggles or alien eyes to work into a mask. These little tennis rackets here, these give you some interesting options, both because you have this bit of net up here at the top that could be used for something, and also this circle and rod design you could use as a basis for a lot of very interesting options for weapons, scepters, mechanical components. Same kind of thing is going to be going on with these, that all of these look like pieces of something bigger. This could be a mechanical component, or it could be a funky shaped, you know, gemstone. All of these things, you know, here this could be a starting point. You could use this as the base for building a crown that actually looks good. We've got some, you know, just a very small amount of interesting fabric here that could definitely be repurposed for something else. You could create some really cool trim or veil kind of material, or wings or fins for a mermaid, all kinds of interesting things there. Not going to get a ton of use out of dog toys, but something like this, again, you have some really interesting shapes here that could be pried apart and repurposed as pieces of a larger mechanical or armor kind of object. Yeah, you don't need any dog treats. But over here in the dog collars and leashes here, this gives you pieces of some really heavy-duty, nice quality paracord and straps and buckles that could be repurposed for other things. Careful trying to use actual glass out of light bulbs, but some of these little guys here, where they have mechanical components, you can definitely pull these apart if you need, say, LED strips for your costume. Instead of going and buying a pack of LED strips for $10, you can buy this $1 LED light, pull it apart, take that LED strip out, and use the wiring that's already in there to control an LED in your costume. The thing is true of flashlights. You already have a light bulb, you already have wiring for battery power. You can take that core out of the actual flashlight casing and incorporate it into something else, giving you a light bulb, a push button, and a case for batteries already put together for you. It's kind of a gimme. Obviously this already looks like a mechanical helmet type component, so you could definitely use that for such things. But you've also got some interesting stuff over here, like these little metal loops on this puzzle that could easily be incorporated into something else or used as hangers. You've got these little cones here that, again, you could put into something else. You could make that part of a hat or a helmet, or well, it could make some bikini armor. It would be terrible, but you could do it. So that actually only takes us halfway through the store. It seems that there are a lot more cosplay options here than I thought. So I'm actually going to stop there and finish the other half of the store in the next video. So today I'm not actually buying any pieces to use. I didn't have a specific costume in mind. This was just kind of a run through to get a sense for all the options that are here, all the kinds of things that you could do with it. But I'm definitely planning on coming back another time in hopes of finding everything that I need for specific cosplay. So I'm going to challenge myself, pick a cosplay, and then acquire the materials for it solely from the dollar store and see how good of a cosplay I can put together. So if you have suggestions for what character or what type of costume I should do for that, go ahead and leave those in the comments. I would love to hear your opinions. As usual, if you want to see more of my stuff, like, subscribe, all of that usual YouTube-y nonsense. And until next time, fare thee well.